just want to play the game. They don't care about
and
whatever.
they want to blow shit up.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is there's a time and a place for blowing shit up, and I think that for us, we're a fantastic place to work if you don't care about blowing shit up.
Yeah.
I thought that it was a good thing because I thought I was part of a green transition.
Yeah.
Because that was what the Scandinavian Airlines told me.
Yeah.
But they were obviously bullshitting me, they were bullshitting themselves, and they are still bullshitting the audience public.
An intergalactic being filled with eternal wisdom, and he's got the entire universe in his eyes.
How much drugs do you do in here?
Not enough, probably. I think that we can take that to the next level.
Can we check out the big pony? This is my highlight of the office.
The big pony. No, this
but I actually really like Frick.
I knew
Fripp
you
is fantastic. Fripp is, but the thing is with Fripp, so he was in a coma for about 7 years in the game, and then he woke up with a new, very annoying personality. So he has gone from being rather mysterious and speaking in the rhythms to being a little bit more sarcastic and aggressive.
So my name is Johan Sjöberg. I'm one of the co-founders of Star Stable Entertainment, and I've spent the last 36 years making games in one shape or the other. I started in tabletop RPGs in the 80s, writing and designing for the biggest Swedish tabletop RPG at that time, which was aptly called Dragons and Demons, but in Swedish, so Drakar och Demoner, so that we could be D&D, same as Dungeons and Dragons. Did that for about a decade, and then me and a couple of friends realized that it was time to, this digital transformation was happening. Video games seemed to be a thing, and we asked ourselves, how hard can it be? So we set up a studio, signed our first deal with EA without having any coders, and went on that trajectory. And since then, I've had the luxury of founding another studio, which later came to develop the game that I'm currently running, Star Stable Online. But I've also spent about a decade as a video game agent, so focusing on business development structures, working for a fantastic little agency called Digital Development Management, DDM, still around today, and also spent 5 years at Paradox Interactive working with Fred Wester and that great team on building that business, taking it through the IPO, and then ending up here as the CEO of a company that I was part founding 11 and a half years ago. In the middle 2000s, we were a small group of companies in Stockholm, Sweden, that were trying to find our footing. One of the companies had the opportunity to pitch to a Norwegian book club or book publisher called Stabenfeld, that had a book club called Pony Club, where they had a massive churn problem. So they was like, what are we going to do to solve the problem of churn? And the pitch was naturally, give your readers free video games. So we came up with a concept that also allowed us to turn the horse game genre on its head, and where all the games at that point in time that were made for girls and focused on the horseback riding hobby were low production values, shallow gameplay, and coming from the background that we did, we said, like, why don't we let adventure and magic into the equestrian world? So we came up with a concept that was called Starshine Legacy, which was essentially Harry Potter meets Black Beauty and a little bit of Star Wars too, just for the sake of it, and off to the races we were. And the games became quite popular with the book club's audience, and over the years we developed a couple of games, going first from level-based adventure games to more open world horseback riding games, and that were building more on the RPG tradition that started to come with World of Warcraft. And as we had reached kind of the limit of where we could go with the book club, we looked at each other, and our creative director at the time was like, why don't we just make the leap? It's like, how hard can it be to build an MMO RPG? And This was in 2010, and the answer naturally is it is quite difficult.
Can be hard sometimes.
It can be harsh, and we made the decision. We sent the dev team to GDC, and they came back and they were like, "We've been to so many talks at GDC, and people saying don't make games for kids. We're in the business of making games for kids." And they're like, "And if you make games for kids, don't make games for girls, because girls don't play games. And if you decide to make any type of games, don't make MMO RPGs, because they cost $50 million and they lose money. And if you make an MMO RPG, don't make it subscription-based." So we're like, all right, we're making a subscription-based horseback riding MMO RPG for girls. And in 2011, we launched in Sweden, in Swedish. We had extremely little content in the game. We had to, at that point in time, commit to a weekly release schedule to make sure that we could sustain an argument for people to actually buy the subscription so that they could keep playing. And that's something that we live with to this day. So we're heading up towards our 600th release.
Nice.
I think today is 595. And we've been doing that ever since. So from that point, we grew from having a grand goal of if we hit 30,000 paying subscribers, we've made it. Now we're at about 780,000 paying star riders, as we call our subscribers, and they're all over the world. The game's played in 180 countries, available in 14 languages, and we're about 200 people here in Stockholm, chipping away at this game every day of the week, and it's been quite the ride. We hope that we have a equally long or even longer ride ahead of us, but it's quite exciting, and it's also a little bizarre when you look in the rearview mirror and you realize that we had a kind of a ragtag band of 10 people that built the original launch product, really using primarily duct tape and straw. So many hacks went into that, and some of them still remain in the code today. But then, that's kind of the story in a nutshell.
You've seen kind of the Swedish and the Stockholm games industry grow and grow and grow. What's unique about the Stockholm scene?
The one thing that the Swedish video games industry, if you will, were really good at was charging kids and families outrageous amounts of money for macromedia CD-ROM productions of mediocre quality, which led to an ecosystem where we had about 7, 8, 9 publishers that were local to Sweden that would pay local studios a decent amount of cash to build quite simple games that then allowed many of those companies to fund some of their development of tech that they could then take on to build greater, cooler things. So I think that that's one part of the puzzle. Another part of the puzzle is that we do have a good engineering scene. We have great universities, we have great access to talent. And the other thing that we believe that as Sweden and Sweden as a company, we've all, or as a country, similar to Finland, as a matter of fact, we've always had to build product for, with the exception, naturally, of the kids' games. But when we wanted to build IP or we wanted to build games, we had to think globally because our home market really wasn't big enough to sustain anything. And then in Stockholm, we started to hit the tipping point when the big international publishers latched on to the idea that this is something special. And I think that something happened when EA made the move and bought DICE.
Finland being Finland and Sweden being Sweden, we're always paying attention to what's happening over here. But I do remember when the DICE acquisition happened, that was really a moment where a lot of people went like, okay, we should probably pay a little bit more attention to what's happening in Stockholm now. Because that was a huge deal, and I mean also for EA, they've gotten quite a lot out of that acquisition.
Yeah, they absolutely have.
When you guys have board level, management level discussions, like what are the kind of bigger trends, bigger themes, opportunities or obstacles that you really kind of take seriously?
One of the things is that with the increased regulations around privacy, etc., which are good on one hand, but also naturally limit the capabilities of companies to reach a new audience, regardless of which platform you're trying to reach them. That's one challenge that we take very, very seriously. And we have a number of initiatives that are ongoing to tackle that. Naturally, we're focusing a lot on our brand and the unique offering that we have. We spend a lot of time on our own channels, and we also try to build interesting things outside of the core product. So we announced earlier this year, we announced a partnership with a US toy manufacturer. That's something that's a big deal for us in establishing ourselves in relation to a younger audience without having to be digitally present in buying, marketing, etc. So I think that that's one thing. I think that the second biggest challenge, which is something that is not necessarily talked about as much today, is I think that we've been on a journey to the top over the last 2-3 decades, depending. And we've hit a couple of minor speed bumps, like just at the .com bubble hit, and we hit the minor speed bump in 2008, just because that hit internationally. But that's nothing, I believe, compared to what we're seeing today. In particular, because the potential downside is so massive compared to the boom that we got during the pandemic. So, and one thing that I'm very curious about and that we're monitoring quite closely is how free-to-play, which is a business model that has not been through a recession yet, will fare. Because if you can play for free and have a fantastic experience, which you can in most great free-to-play products these days, how large is the potential drop for those games? That's something that I'm very curious about.
I'm curious to see how it affects subscriptions, because in the end, if families get to a point where you're kind of going through your monthly expenses, then I don't know what happens if you have 5-6 different digital subscriptions there. Some of them are going to be cut. What about opportunities?
I think that one of the biggest opportunities still, and that's where we started digging a decade and a half ago, so making sure that if you find underserved audiences, wherever they might be, and deliver great quality to them, I think that you still have a lot to win. You need to know your subject matter. You need to take your audience seriously. And if you do that, they will see that you're genuine. And the product will feel relevant to them. And then you can really get their love and commitment. And they will stay for a long period of time.
When we talk about opportunities and obstacles, obviously climate change is a thing that's kind of hard to not think about these days. So how should we even think about this whole subject?
Whatever message we decide to send through our games and in the relationship that we foster with our communities, and then how we get to the point where our products can make it into the hands of the players. And those are two quite different sides to the coin, if you will, of tackling climate change. It's not by chance, if you will, it's like that the big corporate evil destroys the environment, that the headquarters of the foulest players is on an oil drilling platform off the coast, that we have polluted rivers and waterfalls that needs to be like a lot of that is just part of the core message of our product. When it comes to the other side, I think it's sometimes more difficult to navigate, just like how you as a business can help forward both the message but also make sure that the business that you're running is less impactful in a negative way on climate change. I spent this morning meeting with the people that are helping us set up our new office space. A lot of the conversations that we had today are talking about the climate footprint of the choices that we'll be making as we're choosing the lighting fixtures, or we're looking at like, right, which parts of what's in the office can we keep, what can we polish up without having to throw away what's already there, and making sure that, like, in the best interest of us and naturally the planet going forward, it's like we're making smart choices. Two sides of it, like what you represent in your product and how you communicate with your community and your audience, and what you do as a business in running your business and getting your product to market. And you need to take responsibility in both, and you absolutely can.
We are in Gothenburg and trying to find a 30-meter long oil tanker, which will hopefully be explained to you shortly why.
Hey!
Hey, morning.
Morning! Good to see you. Welcome to Drömmarnas Kaj, Pier of Dreams.
Are you doing breakfast?
Yeah, so we've just been dumpstering. We just wanted to check, like, is there really a food crisis? And if you look in the containers of the big corporations, it seems like, no, it's not so much of a food crisis.
Yeah.
So once again, it is a crisis for capitalism. That's what it is. So this is all things we picked up this morning.
Is this all of it? Or?
No, not at all. This is just like a fraction of it. Most of the stuff goes to my friend who's like cooking for the community down there. Well, we can fix that. So do you want to check around?
Yeah,
Watch the boat?
Let's do the tour.
Well, this boat is 125 years old. Was rebuilt in the 50s to cargo ship / oil tanker. So it's kind of cool that we're now repurposing the oil tanker to something better. I'm Gustav, 44 years old, head of creative for Greenpeace Nordic, former ad guy, worked a lot with digital.
Yeah.
Actually, that was my way into the advertising industry. So I was actually always more like a digital guy. Played a lot of punk rock, got into complicated, situation in the sense that all the punk rock ethics, do it yourself, worked really well with the internet, but maybe didn't work so well when capitalism came in, and all of a sudden there I was, a vegetarian selling sausages, right?
Yeah.
So it's always been a little bit of tension there, but I did believe that you could change the system from the inside. Got pretty disappointed after a few years. So now I'm trying to change the system, maybe not from the outside, because Greenpeace and the environmental movement is for sure a part of the system in one sense. But we do want to reform and change the system radically in many ways, and give back the power to the people in one way. That is an important part of changing the system, but also obviously create prosperity without growth, without being outside the planetary boundaries. Then again, are you against growth? But no, not at all. We're against the kind of growth that is ruining the planet. And I was at a conference in Italy with my colleagues, and someone said we should grow the commons, and I think that is a pretty good summary of it all. Yeah, so that's what I'm working with right now. But at the moment we have such huge problems with the ecology crisis, biodiversity crisis, the climate crisis, food crisis, war in Ukraine. There's so many things happening that is urgent to intervene with. So Greenpeace, being a campaign organization with this tool of interventions, actions, obviously spend an awful lot of time intervening with just insane ideas from the fossil industry, from the governments, from the meat industry. So to a large extent, a lot of my time goes to doing these kind of interventions. But behind the intervention, comes a solution that we present. And the solution is rather grow the commons, create an economy that is fair, create an economy that works within planetary boundaries. I sometimes say that I work for a PR agency with the client is Mother Earth. I just love the ad industry. I love the people in it. But there are a few people in it that has been totally corrupted by the idea that they need to get a lot of things they don't need. They want more money, they want to make the stock market happy. And by doing so, they, I don't know, there is something happening in their psyche that makes them do really, really weird stuff.
Yeah, can you tell us about like last year when you were at the Cannes Lions, is that what it's called, or...?
Instead of going and try to stop a new oil rig or stop a build out a refinery, we were discussing, well, we need to work earlier in the process. What is it that creates the demand? What is that create the fossil intense lifestyle? And the answer is pretty simple. It is PR, sponsorships and ads. Because in the end of the day, I know that for sure because I have had Scandinavian Airlines as my biggest client. I've been working for all these fossil companies. I've been selling cars. I've been selling airlines. And I got briefs such as, how can we make Valentine's Day into a travel holiday instead of a dinner holiday? I mean, that is the kind of assignments that some of our most talented brains in society are working with, and they get an awful lot of money to make sure that they don't fail. We should do what we've already done with cigarettes, and that is, well, you can smoke if you like, but we can certainly not allow people to make you smoke.
For sure.
So therefore we banned all cigarette advertising. Back in the days when we still believed that society had a role to play to make people feel good instead of just helping capitalists. So now we want to see if we can somehow wake up that zombie and see if that zombie could be waken up into a welfare state and maybe ban these ads. And we decided that I should go find my old golden lion and then I would somehow get on stage, interrupt the opening gala at the Cannes Lions, the world's biggest advertising festival, and return the lion. And then stay on stage until the guards threw me out. So what we also did was that we brought this this is fine meme to life. So he sits there, the world is on fire, and he gets an award, like lion, and he's happy. This was, by the way, the message I had on my banner on stage: no awards on a dead planet. So we also created an awful lot of dog costumes for all the activists. I think we have like 30 activists dressed as dog who went in and shut down a greenwashing seminar that Shell's agency, Edelman, were having. I mean, they're the greenwashing agency. So they had to evacuate the seminar because it was flooded by This Is Fine dogs. So
nice. Any thoughts on like what could the games industry do with the kind of reach and the power we have?
The main thing I've seen from the gaming industry is that it's been pretty, I mean, a little bit like a Wild West, you know, with loot boxes and it's like a lot of things where it's almost like bridging to unethical gambling business models. What I've seen, if you look at history, is that when advertising sector has made most money, being most happy, and being doing the best quality work, and being most ethical, that has usually happened at the same time. What I'm talking about here is to organize as an industry and rather help regulators do smart and ethical regulations that are pretty hard, but that will lead to that the best and most talented actors will have an advantage, and the dodgy ones that are, I mean, just all over the place, they will have to go. The only setback you can have with that is that it can hurt innovation if you have too much regulation. That is something we just have to acknowledge and accept, because it would be arrogant and ignorant to say the opposite. So therefore you just have to have this kind of balance between smart regulation and a certain kind of focus on innovation. There is an opportunity here to actually say that, okay, we're gonna be at the forefront of ethical regulation. And how do you get there? Well, you organize as a group through some kind of trade body. So why not everybody that has all these ad inventories say, hey, let's push for our ideas on ethics and get all the gamers on board. The combination of getting a lot of gamers on board with having some serious good ethical ideas, there is going to be very little resistance from politicians.
I would imagine, because I mean, so what's interesting to me is that you've done this whole career in advertising and could have kept going on that track, right? But then you made this shift to working for Greenpeace and really like focusing on kind of what's right instead of what makes more money. Do you have any thoughts on, like, if someone's watching this who has kind of like similarly has like a long career and is successful in it and is having these thoughts, like what do you do to turn your career around in a sense?
You know, it's like with exercise. You don't have to go Ironman, Ironman at Hawaii the first day. Start with doing 5 push-ups every day. And you are already on your way. It's always storytelling, you know. So people look, oh, he was an advertising guy, and then it was like, it wasn't really like that. It was actually me trying to slowly transition into something better. And one thing was that when our privileged position as a fairly successful agency allowed, we would steer towards clients that we felt were more in tune with what we wanted, especially what I wanted. So for example, I spent the last years before shifting, I focused more and more on public service clients, such as Sveriges Radio, the Swedish radio, because I believe that by helping them, I think we could get like a better media landscape, and I felt passionate about that. And I think that everybody that has a privilege should put their privilege on the line every now and then. So if you, for example, have like a platform, like it's a privileged position, then you should use your platform, even though you might risk making a few people disappointed, a few people happy. Like, you should use your privilege. If you have a lot of money, maybe you should do something where you say, well, I don't need exactly all this money. Maybe I need this kind of money. This money will go into whatever. You can give it away, but you could also maybe start working with that money together with others and make something that is not focusing on profit. One thing that the gaming industry could and should do is to just make sure that, you know, give the movement, the environmental movement, the peace movement, give them some ad inventory, so we can deploy as a just starting point, just some basic messaging, inspiration for doing something, to make people feel that there is hope. The gaming industry maybe should have like a Earth Day, like one day every year. There's like 48 hours for peace or something. You know, you give away all ad inventory, 48 hours in the whole gaming industry, just for good stuff. And it just because it's free, you could probably also ask for a certain level of quality, because you have to remember that Greenpeace and all the other NGOs that are good in fundraising, we're pretty transactional too. You know, it's not like those ads are woohoo. They're a little bit like, we need to work for the oceans. You know, animals are dying. Give us money. You know, like there is a certain level, because that's just what we have to do to get the money in. We don't have a lot of budgets, so we have to have a certain level of transactional, you know, and if we were to get a little bit for free for 48 hours, maybe we could just spend that on doing something that is not necessarily about getting donors, getting money, but rather being, hey, listen, we just want to tell you a few stories about how society can change and how you can be a part of that movement and how you will have a lot of fun.
And then he dumped his dog costume on me. It's like, hey, this needs to go to Helsinki. Can you take this home? And I was like, yeah, sure.
And you had to like move it. Every time you had to sleep, you had to move the dog costume.
I had to sleep with the dog costume in the trunk of my car, so that was kind of weird. And I guess that's about it.
Sounds like a plan. I'm looking straight into the camera for uncomfortable eye contact with the viewer.